Hello everyone, this is my presentation on the differentiation and maturation of monocytes in stressed male mice with chlamydia muraderum infection. Throughout this PowerPoint, I please ask that you bear with me. I am under the weather and just now starting to feel a little better, so today's the first day where sometimes breathing is not a challenge, so I'm going to try my very best, so here we go. As my introduction, I talked about some of the infections, chlamydia trachomatis, chlamydia muraderum, which is the one we are researching on in our mice. And I also mentioned here a little bit about beta-2 adrenergic receptors in the mice that we are experimenting on and their relationship with the infection, how it affects it, and things like that. Chlamydia trachomatis is the most commonly sexually transmitted infection in the world. Sorry. Most of the long-term consequences occur from this infection being left untreated, as some people realize they have it too late and the infection has already spread and caused a little bit of damage itself. Some of these long-term effects include things such as pelvic inflammatory diseases, ectopic pregnancy in women, tubal factor infertility as well in women, and chronic pelvic pain, which can be seen in men and women, blindness, prostatitis, urethral scarring, and epididymitis have all been reported in men as well. And that's really the human counterpart to the infection we're studying in our mice, but we use chlamydia muraderum in our mice because naturally it only affects species in the Muridae family. Animals like this are small rodents, mice, hamsters, things like that. And as I mentioned previously, this species affects mice, and we can use this in our mice to examine some of the effects it has on them and further expand our knowledge on its human counterpart and how its infection works, and hopefully how we can eventually eliminate it. As I mentioned before, we're experimenting on two different types of mice. Knockout mice, which have the beta-2 adrenergic receptor knocked out, and C57BL6J wild-type mice are also used in this experiment. The beta receptors that are knocked out in these mice are activated by norepinephrine and epinephrine, and they are located in the bronchioles in the lungs of these mice. And after we infect them and sacrifice them, we will surgically remove these parts along with a few others and examine them. As for the significance of this experiment, a factor that plays a really big role in our experiment is the stressing procedure that we use on these mice. We subject them to a cold water bath for about 2 minutes daily. In this chronic stressing procedure, just like humans, when we're placed in chronic stressful situations, it can have an impact on our what's the word I'm looking for? Our immune system. And when your immune system is compromised, it makes you more susceptible to infection. So we can really study the true effects of this infection once their immune system's compromised, and we get the real in-depth look of many of the adverse effects that it has on these mice. In our experiment, my experiment, sorry, not in ours. In my experiment, the lack of these beta-2 adrenergic receptors is expected to lead to a lower incidence of severe lung infection. And also in my experiment, the function of the monocytes is restored in these beta-2 adrenergic knockout mice. As for materials and methods used during this experiment, on this one I put the mice. So we have beta-2 adrenergic receptor knockout mice and the C57 mice, and we have two groups that are subjected to the chronic stressing procedure, and we also have two groups that are not. So we can look at the infection based on how well the stress mice are handling it and the effects it has on them, which is expected to be more severe effects on them. And then we have the non-stress mice, which do not are not subjected to the cold water stressing protocol. As for the experiment, this is how a rough overview of how mine is set up. We stress the mice using the cold water stressing protocol for 21 days. And then on the 21st day, we infect them with a C. muraderum. And after 48 hours, after we after we inoculated the infection, we sacrifice the mice. And then we surgically remove, for me, the femur, looking at macrophages. And then differentiate and mature the macrophages for 24 hours. And then we perform an ELISA on these cells. Sorry. And then we do a culture, and then by doing many of these different methods and not simply the ELISA itself, you can see on here, we get a lot of different results, because sometimes, obviously, using one method is not going to give you every result you need, so using a few of these different methods can really help us study and analyze the effects of how this infection is working on the mice. In the anticipated results, I added this chart that I handwrote myself. Anticipated, we're thinking the beta-2 adrenergic receptor knockout mice will lead to a lower incidence and severity, as well as duration of the infection in these mice. And we also think, like I previously mentioned, that the function of the monocytes will be restored in the beta-2 adrenergic receptor knockout mice. And in this figure, you can see here, that the knockout conditions in the stress and non-stress mice show lower incidences of infection isolated from the genital tract in the mice. And some of the potential pitfalls of this experiment is the count inconsistencies in the inclusion forming units between this different mice. And the inoculation route also cannot be as effective depending on the anatomical part of the mice you're studying, say the lungs or the genital tract. And the dose of the infection also could be a potential pitfall. It might be too high, might be too low. Some mice might handle it differently depending on the receptor knockout, based on the stress, based on non-stress, which can help the infection multiply. And as I mentioned previously, how we're using different analyzing procedures to really look at the infection in these different body parts. The ELISA itself might show inconsistencies in mice, so we're trying to cover our bases. By using a few different other methods, we can really help solidify these results. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.